You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
We have had 17 veterans send up the Star Cluster for help in protest by taking their lives at a VA facility because we can't be heard. That is crazy. I knew 12 years ago these pills were nonsense. Yet here we are in a system where we have to very delicately craft our message so we're not offending the wrong people. We're having to come in and say, well, you know, we're dying at this incredible rate through these murder-suicide pills, but maybe we'll just start with better informed consent. Can we just grovel and plead to please have doctors actually do doctor shit? How about informed consent? How about not lying to us? Well, Congress, that are veterans, you guys are the QRF. Had 17 people send up that Star Cluster at VA hospitals. I've come here for a lot of years watching these committees. I see these politicians come in and sit on the committee hearings. As soon as the initial testimony is done, they scatter like roaches, and everybody comes in one at a time, get their little 10-minute question to launch their clickbait nonsense for social media. That's the system we have to trust in order to get this done. That's nonsense too. So for you members of Congress that are veterans, this is on you guys. Get loud. I know there's nothing legislatively can be done. You can pick up the phone. You can call Kennedy and say, hey, man, you do have the power to make these doctors do their job. That doesn't seem like a real radical request to start with. But this has been going on in silence for 12 years that I'm aware of, that I've been deep in it. I never met a QRF took 12 years to go get troops out of contact.
Oh, yeah.
This is unacceptable. Unacceptable. And we can change this tomorrow. Bobby Kennedy, I am asking you, please, you got the power, man, in this. This is going to be a long battle. This titration's no joke. It's going to take people a long time to learn how to get off these things and effectively do it. It's not a game. It's more dangerous when you try to come off these stupid things. That's where we're at. Well, we've been quiet for too long. The intention of the Grunstyle Foundation is to keep our foot firmly applied to that pedal. We're coming out the wire. We're trying to get everybody to come with us to get this done.
Welcome back to Whistleblower Wednesday here. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Veterans fight to end over-prescribing the drugs that kill more of us than the wars. Why is the fight so important? Let me give you a number. 150,000 dead veterans from suicide over the last 20 years. Let that sink in, friends. Veterans groups, large and small, have worked tirelessly to end the deaths. We're not giving up. These deaths by suicides that we are experiencing are ridiculous. It doesn't need to be this way. The Department of Veterans Affairs spends billions, that's a B, billions on mental health programs that are not delivering for us. Now we hear about an attempt in Texas to ban the use of THC to treat veterans. That's a verifiably working alternative to the VA's preferred approach of over-prescribing Big Pharma's favorite pills, all of which have a side effect of increasing the risk of suicide. That's insane, people. Well, fortunately, what you just saw there was part of a renewed effort sounding the alarm and getting some traction in this fight. That was part of a major press conference held last week and sponsored by Congressman Jack Bergman, a retired Marine general himself, and organized by the Grunstyle Foundation to get the voices of these veterans and their families heard on Capitol Hill and in the VA and in the streets of this country. I'm also very glad to see the big bet groups like the VFW putting their support behind the effort too. That is a really great sign. We may see some movement in the right direction. My guest today is leading the fight to end the killing and is a co-owner of Grunstyle, Marine combat veteran and entrepreneur Tim Jensen. Tim started in 2013 with the company folding T-shirts for just over minimum wage and today develops the brand as the chief brand officer. But even more importantly, he serves as president of the board of directors of the Grunstyle Foundation, the 501c3 focused on this. This issue is the most important issue that any of us will fight in all of our lives. And our service in this to this country spans decades of sacrifice, friends dead in combat, dead in peacetime, lost to suicide. We are not going to quit. We are not going to quit. Tim, welcome back to the Rob Matus Show, my friend. You know, when I met you guys at the Million Man March 13 years ago, or back in 2013, I'd never dreamed that the little T-shirt company that you so graciously provided me with some T-shirts for some things I was doing was going to be this fantastic and exhibit this greatness. But I should have known that because I met those four men that were running that shop that have grown this to what it is and your outfit is and what it's doing today. It's just fantastic. Thank you so much for coming back. The last time you were here was in February when you put out publicly that report about all the billions of dollars the VA spends on mental health, $570 million directly on the dang suicide program, counter-suicide program, and nothing's happening. The numbers are probably increasing from what the data looks like.
Yeah.
Tell us about the trip last week. I love that, man. They've sent up 17 star clusters. There have been 17 American veterans killed themselves at VA facilities. One was a Marine colonel that I remember talking about years ago that sat on his 1 foot thick medical record in his dress blues and killed himself to make the point and complete one more mission. And even that didn't work. But now somehow I think we're getting traction. Tell us what was going on last week.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And, I think, it's been a long time since we've had that first meeting. And, one of the things that we do when we're always down in Washington, D.C., Will and myself, my associate you just saw in the video, calling for the QRF, is that we bring veterans down to those national malls and we walk those monuments together. We are reflecting on those men and women that gave their lives for the very freedom that we enjoy today. And honestly, the freedom that we are enjoying today is for a lot of these people in jeopardy because they are struggling with demons that are completely avoidable through better health care that we would be being provided through a VHA that actually gave a shit about us. And I hate to use such strong language about that, but I can no longer lie about this and watch people lie about what is happening within the community and the obfuscation that's occurring within the suicide epidemic. The numbers are too big, the impacts are too vast, and the amount of people that have been lost to this is insane. I just were told this earlier this week, another Marine from my unit had committed suicide. My friends, we have lost more people to suicide than we did the enemy of this country over the last 20 years. That is unacceptable. And unacceptable situations need bold and big leadership to get something accomplished. And that's why we are stepping into this, and we're calling for the likes of Robert Kennedy to step in and right this wrong, because That is the only way forward. We've done everything that we can to bring attention to this, and I'm encouraged that we've done a lot to get a lot more people looking at this in a different way. But there's a lot more work to do, Rob.
Yeah, there is. So last week, the press conference was a culmination. You guys had a series of meetings, I think, and good on you for getting General Bergman to be the main sponsor, because he carries a lot of weight up there on the Hill when it comes to veterans issues. So that impressed me, because I've worked with other groups that have tried to get him to get out front before, and we weren't as successful as you guys have been. So that's great. Secretary Kennedy, what should be his role in fixing this? That's the first time that really I've heard a group of veterans talk with some forethought and knowledge of what the HHS secretary should be doing in this discussion. So why him, and how can he get that done?
Well, I think it comes along the lines of, like, how is the medical industry, working with the big pharma industries, right?
Mm-hmm.
That we have come to clearly understand, in so many ways, from the opioid epidemic that has occurred, a decade ago, to the polypharma epidemic that we're living in today. That is, here's some antidepressants, here's some painkillers, here's some more pills to offset the symptoms that you're catching from all of these things that you're taking. And next thing you know, you're on 17 pills, you're lethargic, you have sexual dysfunction, you've isolated yourself, and the only way out you think that you have for yourself is by ending your life. That is the scenario that has been created here. And by going, to legislation and trying the legislative route, that has been, done, over and over and over again to no avail. Conversations with the Department of Veterans Affairs, we got to remember, this department was created in 1989 because what they did to Vietnam veterans, and that has not changed. They've just changed Vietnam for Gulf War and now GWOT veterans, and they're treating them the same way. Like this whole program, which is now a cabinet level department, has the ability to fix itself, but it chooses not to. So we have to ask for other departments to get involved in the policing of their own business. Like, let's talk to the doctors and how they're prescribing to individuals, right? When a person comes in that has a very acute situation that is, right now, doesn't need to be prescribed, Klonopin for, 2 years. But that's what's happening. Right. So let's talk about those methods. Let's talk about the way that we're prescribing. Let's talk about how long we're prescribing for, and let's talk about the symptomologies of all these things that are occurring, and the conversations at the point of prescribing these individuals that are not occurring. Which we would say is informed signatory consent, and then we can talk about the prescribing guidelines that, is probably the worst aspect about this. Will touched on it a little bit in his speech at the Capitol, is, these are far more dangerous than the pills themselves, is getting off the pill. That's crazy. That's crazier than the idea of basically a crazy person creating pills.
The first one I went on, luckily I had been briefed by the doc that put me on them, that said, hey, if you ever decide to get off of these, you have to be under a doctor's treatment, because, he was very clear with me that this is very dangerous if you try to get off of these without being under a doctor's care, because he had seen other people take them, because this particular drug was very suppressive on the mind and the body, and its effects got tripled when you go to get off of it if you don't do it right, which is that's what I think is. I think I would like to see a study that shows where the veterans are in their treatment with these pills. Are they trying to get off of them? Are they getting off of them without talking to doctors when they commit the acts? I bet you there hasn't even been a study done, a comprehensive study done of GWOT veterans that tries to find that out. Well, we got to take a break, Tim. When we come back, we'll we'll hear from another individual, Mr. Miller. I think he's a doctor, Dr. Miller, on the steps of the Capitol. And this is going to make you full of righteous anger. We've got to have righteous anger on this, folks. Look, I'm a professional. These are my colleagues, just like everybody. They're all fellow Americans, but the people that are undergoing this in this community has to show righteous anger in order to apparently get our voices heard, and that's appropriate. I'll be right back with Tim Jensen of Grunstyle Foundation and Grunstyle.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
Why would a psychiatrist give a veteran that's suicidal medications that are known to increase suicide by 300%? Why would they do that? I'll tell you why. Psychiatrists have become nothing more than drug dealers. How do I know that? I used to be a drug dealer. When patients came to the emergency room depressed, I would give them the happy pill. I'd give them SSRIs. Why? Because I believed big pharma propaganda. I believed my specialty. I believed that the FDA would protect me against unsafe drugs. I thought I was doing good to my patients, and I was passing out SSRIs until I saw what happened to my son in 2007. At that point, I became very aware of how dangerous these drugs are. I'm asking you to join me to fight for our veterans that have given everything to give us our freedom. I'm asking you to join my son Mark in protest against the psychiatrists that are killing 22 patients per day. I'm asking President Trump and RFK Jr. to step in and do something to stop this travesty. This has got to stop.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and Tim Jensen of Grunstyle Foundation is back with us. And Tim was actually in that video behind the gentleman that was speaking there. And he's back with us to give us an update on that press conference, the meetings that happened last week, and an update on what started in February, where he called out publicly the VA's tremendous spending of billions of dollars for no effect. The numbers continue to get worse of veteran suicides here. And Tim, we're so grateful that you could join us today. Were you holding Dr. Miller's son's picture in that video? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah. That was MA2 Mark Miller. He took his life here in San Antonio at the Audie Murphy VA Hospital. It's the largest VA hospital, I believe, in Texas. And he took his life in protest. Mr. Miller, Larry Miller, shared with us and members of my team some of the text messages between him and Mark up until the point of him taking his life. And it's heartbreaking, right? And this is one story of many. There were 3 other families that we had brought up with us that day to share their losses of their loved ones, from stories of Wellbutrin to, you name the other, all the medicines that are out there that are in this cocktail of things. But at the end of the day, the stories are all the same. My son, my daughter went to the VA to get help. They were prescribed these things, and within a period of time, they were zombies, and they lost the battle. And that's the stories are all the same. And what more do we need to do, like to change this outcome. Like
Hmm.
it's affecting everybody at this point. You can't have a conversation with anybody in America today that doesn't have a degree of separation from this. It doesn't need to be a veteran. It could be your brother, it could be your sister, your son, your daughter, your mom or dad. Right? That's the level of which these have permeated into our society. So what we're talking about at the veteran level, is happening, in the broader cases across the United States, because this is the strategy of these medicines is we're gonna give that out, but we're not going to
Hmm.
monitor it. We're not going to supervise, this stuff because, for whatever reasons, we're following the DSM. The DSM tells us that you're suffering from this moment and you need this
Hmm.
medication, and come back in 2 weeks. Well, we're giving people these drugs that should be like scheduled, at the very least, like a Schedule 3, Schedule 2 class
Hmm.
drug.
Yeah.
It is, inducing a psychological state for these individuals and putting them into places, that is emotionally withdrawn, and they're not in full faculty to be making some decisions. In some cases, I'm not saying all cases, in some
Hmm.
cases, it's just wrong.
Yeah, the human body is interesting because we're each individualized, so we react to things differently, no matter who it is or what it is. And Mr. Miller and his son, they actually wrote a book
Yeah.
about this issue, didn't they? So it's not like Mark didn't understand from an intellectual perspective what was happening, was it?
No, no, I believe this was a conversation they've been having for well over a decade, right? Because his first
Hmm.
experiences were with Prozac, years before he, had, ended his life. So this was something that they were struggling for a long period of time. And let's talk about Dr. Miller for just a short period of time here.
Yeah.
This was an emergency doctor physician, right? He spent time working within the VA, very understanding of the circumstances of the veteran and some of their specific needs, right? So this man is coming from a place of knowledge. And for him to stand in front of the nation at a press conference in the capital of our country and saying, hey, we've got a problem, and I was a part of that problem, and I was wrong for doing that. And here's me trying to right that wrong. That took a lot of gumption and a lot of conviction for that man. And in spite of all the things that he's going through
Hmm.
personally, the loss of his family, and just one story of so many stories of what these medicines have done and wrecked in people's lives.
Yeah, it didn't go without notice that he was talking to about the FDA and the information that's given to the doctors about these drugs, and that it's propaganda. And he comes from a much deeper understanding as a professional physician, plus the dad of a veteran that's gone through this. Than probably anybody in America. I'm so grateful that he was able to do that. Well, let's take some questions from the audience. We've got one up there. Go ahead, Shell.
We have anti-commie, sir.
Hey, hi. I just had a question about lately there's been a lot of veterans crying out for help on their social media pages, on X, and on other apps. And I honestly didn't know how to handle it. I actually DM'd Shell and Rox because I didn't know what to do. And it kept me up all night because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to feel so bad if something happens. And it was just horrible, but it's been happening more and more lately. So, how would you suggest handling that situation?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because every circumstance is different. You don't know where these individuals are in any point of their, experience, right? It could be a financial circumstances, or it could be a family circumstance. It could be something completely unrelated that's triggering this event in time, right? So that's what makes these things very unique. But I think what is most important for any individual that's wanting to, do more than just watch it from the sideline, and I think that we all should do more than just watch from the sideline, is have a good
I'm
resource.
having a little trouble with my volume.
Having some resources at the ready that you can deploy towards an individual. And for example, right, every VFW across the United States has a fund that they manage for these types of circumstances, these emergency types of circumstances. You can point the individual to that, right, to those resources. The VA has also established through its community care policies that an individual that's suffering from immediate suicidal ideations in the now can go to a emergency room anywhere in the country and be treated for that moment in time, and the VA will cover those emergency room expenses. So that is another resource that is available. Those are just a couple of things that I would suggest, is making sure that you just build a good portfolio or Rolodex of numbers that are available to you that you can provide to an individual and give them the resources they need, because that may be just what they need. It could be that conversation that brings them back and gives them that opportunity to say, you know what, you're right, I need to go talk to somebody. Or, maybe they just didn't have the resource and they're spinning out because they're stuck in the OODA loop and they can't get out of that. So that's probably the best case, because in most circumstances, none of us are trained for these events. And, I would hate for anybody to be involved in a circumstance where they tried to get involved with the best of intentions, and the person ended up taking their life, and the other individual, feeling remorse or regret because they didn't know or do the right thing. So we just got to be careful on how we approach those circumstances and make sure that we're doing it from a place of resource and, just of help.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything I could add to that either. I keep the obviously, if somebody's reaching out on social media, they've at least got a phone, so they have access to the internet. And the suicide hotlines, whether civilian or veteran, are all available there. You can help point them to that. Heck, with these phones these days, you may be even be able to conference them into dial the phone number for them. For all I know, I don't think I'd be able to do that, but those types of capabilities are there. Tim, you mentioned the VFW, and I don't think a lot of veterans know the full range of help that's available in and out of the VA. I was very glad to see that senior leaders from the VFW nationally and state level are engaging with you guys. That is a huge step forward, in my opinion. How is that going, and is it having the positive effect that I think it's going to have?
I can't speak fondly enough for the individuals I've worked with at the VFW. It has inspired me so much that I have joined the local post here in Texas and San Antonio, and have gotten involved as much as I am the 3-year trustee for that post. And I never thought of myself being an engaged, active VFW member, but with the people and the level of individuals and the values that they bring to their roles and their positions, from the national commander to the adjutant general, down to the local post commanders. San Antonio just elected its first female officer in the 109 years it's been around. And what I mean by first female officer, it's the first post commander. That's fantastic stuff. And I think that the VFW is doing a lot in this conversation, on advancing this issue, because, for the membership, and a lot of what people don't understand about the VFW is that it's a member driven organization. And for them to make the legislative actions that we see them doing, the entire membership has to put that forward, and they have to vote on it, and they have to, all 1.4 million members, agree upon that. And one of the 4 legislative actions that they have voted on as a body is this over-prescribing, identifying that the suicide epidemic is real within our community, and then putting action of legislation in their full body of the organization against it. And they've really come through in spades on that in helping us elevate our voice, bringing some resources to provide a outstanding summit that we put on in Washington D.C. And we have a lot more planned with them that I really think is going to change the way that the veteran service organizations are looking towards the GWAT veteran, right? In particular, which the VFW is seeing record growth in their membership of a lot of these GWAT guys coming and gals coming into the membership. So it's really been a lot of fun. I'm really encouraged by what I'm seeing there. Again, to the point it's motivated me to join and be an active member.
Yeah, well, it was GWAT veterans that were elected to take command of the New Orleans, Louisiana VFW that I didn't even live in New Orleans. I lived about 20 miles away, but I was inspired by them years ago to join the VFW. I'm a life member of the VFW now, and I'm still a member of that detachment intentionally because they were so great. And every time I talked to a VFW leader at the national level in my travels, I always tried to point out to them, hey, you guys should really come down and check these guys out. So hopefully that model's being spread because they were young GWAT combat, in this case, combat Marines. We have a lot of Marine veterans down here in this part of the country, especially in the New Orleans area. And they just did a fantastic job and continue to do that. To do that wonderful job. So I'm glad you're involved. I'm glad they're involved because when the VFW takes the lead amongst the veteran service organizations, it really helps build momentum. And it may not be tangible, but it's very important. Well, we got to take another break. Tim, when we come back, I'm going to show a little clip about Texas and SB3. And I think Janae's still in the audience, but Janae Sergio is in this clip. It's very interesting. I want to get your thoughts on the whole THC thing and how effective it can be to help. We'll be right back with Tim Jensen of Grunt Style Foundation, helping veterans get past this suicide issue.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
My name is Janae Sergio. I'm an 8-year Navy veteran. I was one of the first to deploy after 9/11 in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. I'm also a survivor of military sexual trauma living with post-traumatic stress disorder. After I got out of the Navy and was diagnosed, I had 2 instances where I considered taking my life. On the first instance, I went to the VA and tried to get help the right way, the way that we're told to do as veterans. I sat in the waiting room for 3 hours, bawling my eyes out, waiting for someone to see me. They saw me for 10 minutes, prescribed me some medication, and sent me home. The medication that they prescribed me, I was working at the time in submarine repair, so I couldn't be, I had to be focused. The medication that they prescribed me made me foggy. I wasn't able to concentrate, and I was unable to do my job where I'm the breadwinner for my family, and I have 2 daughters that I need to support. So I had to stop taking the medication. The second instance, I had a choice. I had a split second to make a choice. I heard Mr. Richardson earlier say that the compassionate use program is a give and take program. And I'm telling you, it's not a give and take program when you're talking about a split second choice that someone has to make. I had to the right of me, I had a gun, and to the left of me, I had Delta 8. And I was able to pick the Delta 8, take it, and give myself the pause that I needed in order to compose myself and make a right decision. Suicide is a long-term solution to a short-term problem, and it could be just a matter of taking one gummy that can stop a veteran from taking their life. And so I'm here to share my testimony. Like every other veteran here, we want some regulation. We don't want this in the hands of children. But there are people like us, veterans, who are out here surviving in society, doing amazing things, but there could just be that one moment where it could be all over for us.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and we continue to sound the alarm about the issue of veteran suicide because the numbers are not decreasing in spite of the billions of dollars, the massive amounts of legislation that the United States government and even state governments are spending are not going down. And Tim Jensen, the president of the board of directors of the Gruntstyle Foundation and a co-owner of Gruntstyle itself, is with me today. And Gruntstyle Foundation is leading this effort and has been all year ever since this devastating report came out showing how many billions of dollars the VA spends with no results on veteran suicide. And Tim, this issue with Texas wanting to ban THC from veterans and impacting veterans, when we first made gains years ago on the use of THC to help instead of getting prescribed SSRIs, it was at the state level. So it kind of caught me off guard when I first heard about this. And I think the call is still out there. There's some kind of petition going on also to get the Governor Abbott of Texas to veto SB3, I believe. What is going on here? Why did this issue even come back up?
Well, what I love about podcasting, Rob, is that we can finally say the things that the truth. We can speak the truth without being feared of censored. And clearly the problem here in the state of Texas is that the alcohol industry is under threat from a thriving hemp industry that has created more than 50,000 jobs and $8 billion of annual revenue, that is putting a declining alcohol industry in the state of Texas in jeopardy of losing its political control that has influences on the likes of Lieutenant Dan Patrick. Now, I've spent time over the course of this conversation, since Dan Patrick has went off the rails in support of his friends at distributors across the state of Texas that are putting money into his account. We time with his chief of staff and his policy writers to no avail, speaking to them the truth about veterans in this state that use CBD, hemp, and hemp-derived THC products in the state for medicinal use, from pain management to sleeping to you name the circumstance that cannabinoids and THC are providing for individuals that is clearly again challenging the status quo of the alcohol industry. Now we find ourselves in this very strange position, right? After speaking to Lieutenant Dan Patrick's people, we went and had a great conversation with the governor, and the governor is certainly feeling the heat of what is happening here in the state of Texas, right? Again, you've got a thriving $8 billion annual revenue business here in the state that's driving a lot of tax that is certainly managing some of the bigger conversations that need to be happening in the state of Texas, like the increasing property taxes. But we spend more time talking about taking away rights and privilege and access from the individuals of our states, rather than talking about the things that really. So we find ourselves in this position that Governor Abbott can veto SB3 on its face value and say, absolutely, the people of Texas have spoken. In fact, they didn't even ask for this. You brought this before the state and its people by holding certain bills hostage in the state legislature. So I think the whole process has been bankrupt. I think that, it is clearly a play by the big alcohol industry in the state of Texas that is trying to smother a business, an industry that's providing a lot of medicinal value to veterans and just people that consume its product.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate, that lobbying and big money politics has to come and get in the way of something that shows such promise to make a dent in this veteran suicide issue, because it really does. I mean, Janae's testimony is very compelling and everything. I hope they heard from many, many more people than her about that. I mean, I'm not opposed to regulation. Look, I've never been for recreational cannabis wholesale use and those kind of things. But on the medical side, I've always tried to support that once I figured out through talking to some good people, all veterans, about the positive impacts that it's made on their lives. So how can people encourage Governor Abbott to veto this thing?
Well, I think it's getting involved in the conversation. There's a lot of interest groups here in the state of Texas that are having conversations about cannabis induced disorder, right? CUD, or all these other made up medical circumstances that are just false. Right. And that's what's leading the conversation here in the state of Texas. So I think what we need is just people that, that are using these products, that are finding great value in them, is to get up and speak their story, to send that story to the governor's office. He's got till the 22nd of June, as I understand it, to veto this thing, and to really make a decision that is going to, really speak up what Texas stands on, and that's, freedom. Right. That's what brought me to Texas, was, economic freedom and my own liberties that I was being oppressed in the state of Illinois. Right. So now I find myself in Texas getting cannabis and THC potentially taken away from me. And the state that I left with, which is far more communist, is participating in the THC state and allowing medical practice for their citizens. Like, it's madness.
Yeah, politics is a strange world and a strange arena, my friend. Welcome. Welcome in. Well, we got some questions in the audience. Let's go ahead and take some before we go to this next break. Go ahead, Shell.
We have 2A vet, sir.
Good afternoon. So my question is kind of a question and a comment combined into one. So my issue with all this veteran focused stuff is, all right, so you have a private at 2 or 3 years in the military service who watches his best friend get blown up, right? That private then spends another 17 years in the military suffering, never getting help. Then he hits the VA. He's already got it psychologically programmed into his mind after serving for 17 years, after watching his best friend get blown up in the combat service, that I'm not going to speak about my issues because it brings shame. People in the service, anybody who's ever held a security clearance or anybody that's been in a combat unit knows that if they bring up their issues, that they're going to be shamed. They're going to be looking at like people who are just an embarrassment, and they're not trusted anymore. When are we going to actually go after the source, which is during service members' service, and hitting the problem at its source, not waiting until they become a veteran 17 years later when it's already too late?
I think that's a great question. And, I will tell you from my personal experiences in the conversations that we've been having with the Grunstyle Foundation, very anecdotal, okay, but I think it paints a relatively neat picture that fits into this puzzle. So, in the conversations that we've been having, what we have been learning is that, the combat experience of and the trauma that is incurred by, individuals is really a very small and a fraction of what the bigger problem is. a lot of service members are bringing luggage and trauma with them to their military service, right? I'll use myself for an example, right? I was escaping personal trauma. I was escaping an environment that I didn't want to be in any longer, and frankly, that I felt threatened in, and I needed to get away from that, and I chose the military to do that, and in all of that, right? I was provided a comfort, right? I was given 3 square meals a day. I was given a place to rest my head. My clothes were provided for. I had no real, wants or needs, because it was all being facilitated by the military. All I had to do is make sure I showed up and then I washed my clothes. Those were really the only 2 responsibilities that I had. But once you leave that military service, it could be 4 years, it could be 20 years of service, it could be 30 years of service, because we've seen it with master sergeants and sergeant majors and officers, field grade officers. We've seen it from all walks of life. Is that once that those things have been removed from an individual that has lived in that isolated environment for such a long period of time, that when they come out into the real world and none of those things are provided, there's no guarantee for any of that. That's when the trauma starts coming to the surface, and we start to see spin outs of individuals. And generally we see that within the first 4 years of their separation. And you can think about the people that and you could probably put them into that box, because it is an experience, right? That if you look at the majority of the service members that join the United States military, they're coming from divorced homes, middle America, with some sort of alcohol, past, some drugs in their past. These are people that are coming into the military with circumstances already. And then once they're out of that and they don't no longer have those security blankets because they just don't exist any longer, the real madness begins. And that's why it is so imperative that we put a lot more focus into these transition sustainment programs to make sure that we're bridging people the right way. Like, we put all this focus in making sure that the person's qualified for a job by saying, here's your resume, make sure you do all this, right? When we should be thinking about, hey, how's your mental health, guy, gal? Like, what's going on? You want to, we're going to give you 40 hours of mental health therapy before you leave the military. That would be a bold new idea. And that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. Well, we got to take our last break, Tim. I'll provide a little bit of an answer from a commander's perspective when we come back to what the 2A vet was talking about there. We'll be right back with Tim Jensen of Crunch Style Foundation. We're fighting to end this epidemic of veteran suicide. It's a decades-long war, but we're going to win it eventually.
Received the medication on April 5th, 2023. He took 8 pills and he died on the 8th day. April 13th was the worst day of my life.
On November 13th of 2022, 104 days after seeking help from the Tuscaloosa VA Medical Center, Hunter died by suicide, and he had just turned 23 2.5 weeks prior.
April 7th, Mark sent me this note. Papa, I love you very much, and I always will. This was at 12:30. I immediately replied, son, I love you very much too. 5 minutes later, he went into the VA and shot himself to death. He shot himself as a protest for what the VA had done to him, not only to him, but what they had done to thousands and thousands of other veterans.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and we just wanted to honor a few more of those veterans whose family members were at that press conference last week on Capitol Hill that Grunt Style Foundation is the organizer for, and the president and board of directors of that foundation is with us today, Tim Jensen. And Grunt Style has weighed into this fight to very, very good effect, as they say. And Tim, the question that 2A vet asked, let me just answer that from a commander's perspective. And I commanded combat units at the 05 and 06 level, and have dealt with this myself, have my own combat experiences and traumatic experiences and those kind of things too. But the year I retired, the United States Army, and I left the Air Force in the last month of the year, the United States Army had over 360, I don't remember the exact number, but there were 360 active duty soldiers suicides that year. And the Air Force's numbers were rising. I had one in my own command, but he wasn't a combat veteran. So that was it. That was very interesting too. But let me just address the shame thing. I tell you that commanders learned from these tough lessons and tried to whittle down the shaming thing and encourage people to go ask for help, because they're combat resources. Look, we were deploying and redeploying people that we were wanting them to go ask for help in between the deployments if they thought they needed it. Sometimes they don't recognize it. And as Tim mentioned, it's after the weight of everything that's holding them down. It's like a spring being uncoiled when they leave the service, which is why you see this happen in their first 4 years, a lot of them, especially the younger folks. But that's the issue. And one of the other issues I'll just say is that the mental health care rules of engagement in peacetime are not adequate for dealing with warriors that are professional warriors that may stay in for 4 years, but may go on for 20 years, as 2A vet mentioned. Those rules of engagement still probably need to be addressed and changed, because I've seen commanders use mental health visits, directing mental health visits as a quasi punishment before, and that's unsatisfactory. And I think that's part of where 2A vet was coming from. But Tim, I just wanted to honor some more of those young people and their families there, and give you a chance to talk about them if you want to. And let's take some more questions, and then we can talk about where Grunt Style Foundation is going, what future plans you have, and what's going on. Because I've seen this thing called Irreverent Warriors, and I had not seen it before getting prepped for this show, and I think it has something to do with y'all. Let's take a question from the audience first. Go ahead, Joe.
We have Cookie, sir.
Good afternoon. There's a VA in Sheridan, Wyoming, and their specialty is mental health. I started my career in law enforcement back in '93 there. We were given no training on how to, deal with or help veterans. We just kind of had to wing it. It wasn't until the very end of my career that they were doing like a crisis intervention. So I was wanting to know, do you guys have, or do you know of programs out there that are geared towards law enforcement first responders that agencies can use and have them trained?
That's a great question. One of the things that we think about a lot within the Grunt Style Foundation is the, veteran, prison population, and, those that, are suffering from TBI, PTSD, circumstances that find themselves, behind bars for, these criminal behaviors. That's a big problem, right? So much so that you're seeing over the years these veteran courts popping up in jurisdictions, and these are really established to. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but they're established to litigate these things with the understanding that the veteran could be in an acute position with their mental health, right? It could be from PTSD, it could be from TBI, it could be from whatever the circumstances is. But they've created this outlet for these circumstances because of the GWAT veteran. I would say, for anybody out there, law enforcement and things of that nature, like, at least understanding that those programs exist. Now, I know that there are programs that are that exist specifically for the veteran in dealing with these moments in time, as a resource. I don't necessarily know of any off the top of my head that I could provide, but certainly something that we will look at and we can sort of publish within our resources, as we come across it. But that is a really good question, and I wish I had an answer for you.
Yeah, it is a great question. I can tell you that in the Air Force, we instituted crisis intervention training for supervisors and commanders and senior non-commissioned officers and mid-level non-commissioned officers too at the supervisor level, because of the rash of suicides that we were having on active duty. And I'm not sure, I can't speak for the United States Army folks, but I'll dig into it and we can see if we can upload whatever we find into the comments and everything there. It's a great question. So tell me about Irreverent Warriors, Tim.
Yeah, so Irreverent Warriors is a group that very near to my heart. It was founded by an old friend of mine, Donnie O'Malley, who's the former CEO of Veteran TV, with the understanding of bringing veterans out of isolation through camaraderie and having a bit of fun while doing that. And what does that mean, right? Coming out of isolation, yada yada yada. Well, we believe that by bringing veterans together, like the VA, when veterans are together, they have the ability to have unique conversations, and 99% of those times, those conversations are healing, and the veteran doesn't even know it because they're sharing experiences that they would not normally share with a family, a loved one, or even their spouse. So we're creating these moments in time, and it's really just a day of walking together while wearing some ridiculously short silkies that you might be romanticizing from your time in military service and PT, and then getting together and going for a short 8-mile hike together, and along the way stopping and participating in some healing moments, right? Of just camaraderie. And this is what we feel has been an incredible tool in suicide prevention. So much so that the Gwen South Foundation has merged with the Irreverent Warriors and bringing them into our orbit and our 501c3, and they are specifically our suicide prevention program within the Gwen South Foundation. We have about 75,000 members across 90 cities in the United States, and the idea is to just bring veterans out, have a day together where we're celebrating our culture and our lifestyle and having some really good, robust conversations that you wouldn't normally have at your house or in your small circles. So that's really the long and short of it. And you can find out more about Irreverent Warriors by going to irreverentwarriors.com and see the full breadth of their work and how to get tied into any city across the United States.
That's fantastic. When I first looked at it, I chuckled, and you just said something about the silkies and everything. It reminded me of a story of where I was the base commander at the pararescue school was there. And those guys like to run in formation without shirts, but they do wear the silkies and through the base housing neighborhoods. I never received any complaints, though. I don't know why.
Right.
But sometimes we have unique experiences and language that we talk to each other. And I think that's the point, right? A lot of it is humor. I mean, we communicate through dark humor in all of my jobs that I did with close colleagues, especially.
Yeah. There's one common thread that you will find in any veteran of walk of life is that there is a dark humor that once tapped, you're gonna want to hope that or wish that you put the lid back on that thing because we certainly is part of that embracing the suck, right? The shared misery, and the only way that you could do it is through super sarcasm.
Yeah, go look at the tweet. I think it was Newsom that had the picture of the guy sleeping on the floor, the guard guys sleeping on the floor out in L.A., and just go look at the responses from the veterans on there. I put one out myself.
Right. It's like, that's a Tuesday.
Those guys are in luxury. What are you talking about? Before I let you go, I've got about a minute and a half here. Is there any other legislation? Like I know a friend of mine with the organization that I was on the board of directors for, Military Veterans Advocacy, is helping support a bill for hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which I know helps TBI, PTSD combinations, but we can't get the VA to do it. Are you guys working in any of that space that you're supporting? Any other legislation coming up that people need to know about?
Absolutely. We believe and are big advocates for hyperbaric chamber therapy, or hyperbaric oxygen therapy, rather. We are working with some friends over at the HBOT for Heroes in the state of North Carolina that's really pioneering what is happening within the veteran HBOT spot. So, hats off to all the people in North Carolina that are making that happen. Like, that is such a monumental part of getting this, more broadly accepted across the country, because HBOTs really is, something of magnificence. It is it has the ability of doing so many different things for an individual, from brain tissue regeneration to soft tissue generation from amputations. So it's an incredible part there. I would say the other thing that we are involved with that is part of this broader conversation of over-prescribing is, there are several states within the United States right now that do not have strict reporting on their suicides within the state themselves. And there's about 24 states right now that I believe are not required to report their suicides.
Okay.
So part of painting this full picture and spectrum of the impacts of veteran suicide, we need to get these states into a position where they're all reporting the suicides so that we can get better visibility of that. Because what we hope is not the case. I say this with great hope. Is that the true number of deaths a day is somewhere between 60 and 80, because there's so many states that are just not reporting.
All right. Well, thanks for letting us know that. We'll keep an eye on that and encourage people to go ask for that. Well, Tim, thank you very much. You can find BondX at GruntStyle1SG. And tomorrow's Truth Thursday, we'll be talking about Saturday, NoKings.org, and the Marxist communists that are planning massive direct actions around this country. I'll see you then.